Swami Shankarananda says this: since I'm responsible for every reaction I have to life, that means I have the power to change my reactions. He also says, when do you suffer? The moment you forget that there's only one power, and that's all God power. He also says, so long as you don't know yourself, you're going to suffer. So long as I don't know myself, I believe that there's something other than myself that determines how I feel. And so for each of us, we're giving ourselves the gift of the power to change. And so the teachings in the yogic tradition, also in the Buddhist tradition, in many traditions, are all about this. And good morning, welcome, 1,000 welcomes to you all. And we are meditating, starting a new series today. The topic is power to change. And I will share with you a teaching from Swami Shankarananda that uses that phrase, power to change. So Swami Shankarananda, if you're new to the community, founded this community November 3rd, 1974, so almost 50 years ago, and we're celebrating that 50th anniversary this fall. He left the body in 2014, and before he did, he trained me as his successor. So I've been serving as Swami for 10 years. I have a 10-year anniversary coming up. Acharya Premadas has a 10-year anniversary of serving as Acharya for the community for 10 years, and Kashi just celebrated a 1-year anniversary of serving as Acharya as well. And these things are important to recognize for each of us. Always, we're simply rededicating ourselves to the practice. We're always simply rededicating ourselves. How may I share kindness? How may I share light? How may I share inspiration? How may I share wisdom wherever I am? And so for everyone, just to reconnect with your primary commitment to your spiritual ideal, to karma yoga, to meditation, to just being that energy of joy right where you are in the midst of daily life. Power to change. Swami Shankarananda says this: since I'm responsible for every reaction I have to life, that means I have the power to change my reactions. He also says, when do you suffer? The moment you forget that there's only one power, and that's all God power. He also says, so long as you don't know yourself, you're going to suffer. So long as I don't know myself, I believe that there's something other than myself that determines how I feel. And so for each of us, we're giving ourselves the gift of the power to change. And so the teachings in the yogic tradition, also in the Buddhist tradition, in many traditions, are all about this. And I'll share a couple of scriptures, a couple of entry points to meditation. And then for each of us, it is to reconnect, as we did at the start, reconnect with what is my spiritual ideal, what do I love most dearly and deeply, and just rededicate myself to realizing those truths, to living those truths in daily life. And then to rededicate myself to being of service, to sharing all the light that the divine would like to share through me. So this is from the Upanishads, the Svetashvatara Upanishad. The bluebird with brown eyes, and the green parrot with red eyes, the clouds with their lightning flashes, the seas and the seasons are thyself manifested everywhere. Thou art the one reality which is without beginning, yet all have their origin in thee. Dwelling within this body are the supreme self, the individual self, and the potencies of thought, volition, and feeling. The individual self, by means of the potencies of thought, volition, and feeling, creates and lives in a little world of its own desires and pleasures. But finally, the indwelling supreme self, the true human, by its inherent power of illumination, renounces all bondage of limitations and regains freedom. So there are teachings of truth to feast upon for the rest of this lifetime and for all of eternity. So we're going to share a few entry points here. One thing is to say, this teaching tells you the power of illumination is within me. There is never a moment of my existence, there is never a moment of any human existence where the power of illumination is absent. Light is always there. And so the moment I remember that, by the power of illumination within me, I have the power to change. What this teaching says is that each of us, by our thoughts, are either creating a limited world or an expansive world. By our choices, we are either creating a selfish world or a generous world. By my feelings, I am creating limitation or I am creating liberation. And it is not for myself alone that this is important. Every time I choose kindness, that deposits kindness in the bank of consciousness that is available to all humans. Every time I choose light, every time I choose generosity, that flows out in consciousness. And so what this is telling you is, and this is ancient teachings, but vitally important for us to realize these truths right now. My thoughts affect not only myself, not only everyone I encounter, but hundreds of people, thousands of people, some of whom I will realize my thoughts affected them. Some of them I will never realize that my thoughts affected them. The same for my choices, the same for my feelings. I am a powerful generator of consciousness in my thoughts, in my choices, in my feelings. That's what this teaching is saying for every human on the planet. So each of us is connected, going back to the Gayatri, we're connected to the radiance that pours forth and becomes all of this. That means that the thoughts that I think, they become visible in time and space. They help shape what I experience. They help shape what other humans experience in time and space. The choices that I make, obviously, help shape what I experience and what other humans experience as well. But my feelings also help shape my experiences and what others experience as well. So I'll share with you a couple of examples.
Hi, I'm Porna, and I'm a karma yogi at Awake Yoga Meditation. We love to share the teachings of yoga philosophy. I mean, it's love, it's inspiration, it's peace, and this piece is for everybody. So if you like what you see, like, share, and subscribe. Spread that joy, y'all.
And then I also might share a teaching from the Buddha before we dive into some examples. The Buddha says this in the Dhammapada, and it's a very related teaching. Those who are free from anger, hatred, pride, vanity, selfishness, attachment, and the like, and above all, in whose consciousness is not the least trace of the ignorant and false concept that humans are sensory beings, they alone live in peace and happiness while on earth. Come then, like the self-illumined souls of the higher planes of consciousness, let us live in peace on earth. And what that teaching says is, I have the power to live in peace on earth as I free my own consciousness from anger, from hatred, from pride, from vanity, from selfishness, from attachment, from identifying myself with anything that I experience through the senses, from identifying any other human with anything that they experience through the senses. I may live in peace on earth. The power of illumination is within me. And so let's just say that you have this positive, powerful intention to self-transform in relation to any pain that you have experienced in your human journey, in your human lifetime. One of the ways to work with this, by the power of illumination inherent within me, I lovingly melt away the pain that I have been carrying. And I allow that to transform into understanding. I allow that to transform into kindness. I allow that to transform into compassion. And we do this, Swami Shankarananda says, be willing to do this 100,000 times a day initially, if that is how many times it takes. So keep your sense of humor, keep playing with this. By the power of illumination within me, this is inevitable. If I continue to choose to vanquish those thoughts of pain that I have been carrying, they will transform little by little. So I'm going to share a couple of stories which help approach this truth and this reality. The first one, and some of these stories make me cry, so if I cry, it's love and gratitude and respect. One of these stories comes from when Swami Shankarananda was close to leaving the body. So he was in the hospital right before he entered hospice care. And this was something that was reported to me by an attendant who had been with Swami Shankarananda at night. So Swami Shankarananda woke up in the middle of the night, and he was so excited to share this teaching of truth. He grabbed the attendant's hand, and he held very firmly to the attendant's hand, and he said, "We have the power to choose our thoughts." That is freedom. We are free. And he gripped the attendant's hand. And so that's a transmission from a master, right? The physical body is letting you know you're not going to be in the physical body. I have the power to choose my thoughts. That is freedom. We are free. And so this is just a natural teaching, a natural recognition, a natural sharing of light and truth. That was what Swami Shankarananda lived every moment of his existence. So of course he lived it the whole way through, including in the hospital bed shortly before entering hospice. And so this is just a reminder for me, whatever it is that I am encountering in time and space, I have the power to change my thoughts, to choose my thoughts. I have freedom. That is freedom. I am free. And so, of course, I just want to tell you, if you're new to these teachings, you're still aware of what's happening in time and space. You're still responsive. You still are more present and more gloriously able to be of service. It's just that you're non-attached and you're identified with the source of the solution. So the source of the solution is eternal. No matter what the body is going through, that eternal light, that eternal love, that eternal realization is sharing itself always. And so that's just how it's shared through Swami Shankarananda. But for each of us, it's just whatever I'm facing, whatever I am self-transforming, by the power of illumination within me, I have the freedom to choose my thoughts. That is freedom. I am free. And it's this same teaching. That's what the Buddha is saying in the Dhammapada as well. That is what this Svetasvatara Upanishad is saying as well. And this is something that can be lived and realized. And so it's up to me, it's up to us, all of us, to live and realize this in daily life. So I have a couple of stories that help us tune into different ways in which we can encounter, I'll call them like scripts or thought patterns in time and space. And so the first script or thought pattern in time and space comes from my neighborhood. And I think it was Friday that I was hearing about this. And it's kind of like a charming, generous, kind, goodwill example. So there's this house in my neighborhood that recently switched owners. So new people moved in just a little while ago. The house has a very large, very abundant fig tree that's kind of like right on the corner of its property. The fig tree hangs over the fence, and there's a little brick right below the fig that says, "Have some figs." And so one of my neighbors was telling me this, and she was like, "Yeah, I went over and I got like, maybe about a pint." But then she was saying, "I saw one of your neighbors who took a whole grocery bag over there and was like filling up the whole grocery bag." And I was asking, do the new people know that there's a brick that says, "Have some figs"? Or are the new people wondering, like, what's up with this neighborhood? These people just keep picking my figs. And so this is an example of the script pre-existed the people who are now in the house, right? The script was there already. It was already in place. It was already running. And I'm just going to say that's an example of human kindness, human peace, human goodwill, human harmony, human generosity. The scriptures here are referring to this as living in peace on earth. And so that can happen sometimes, that there are these scripts that are already in place. And then we move into the neighborhood and we get to participate in these scripts. And they're really beautiful. And obviously, the people who live in that house are free to decide, do they want to keep the brick that says, "Have some figs," or not, right? Like that's their particular choice. And that's an example of just being the beneficiary of a kind of flow of neighborhood goodwill, being the beneficiary of a kind of flow of generosity, of sharing, of abundance, of gratitude, of kindness. And that's what these teachings are telling us. They are telling us this is our true nature, and each of us, as we choose our thoughts, as we take conscious charge of our choices and of our feelings, that is what we are free to create. We are free to create that peace on earth. So a charming example of the scripts that humans can create. And so then here's one of those heartbreaking examples of the scripts that humans create, but it ends up being spiritual triumph, so stay with me on this. So this is also a true story, but it happened centuries ago, and it's a true story about someone who, when he was 7, experienced his father leaving the body, and his father had asked the father's brother to take care of the widow and the 7-year-old. And the father's brother declined to do that. So the father's brother made them work as servants. They were starving. They were abused. And when the 7-year-old became a teenager, his mom said to him, I need you to kill those people. And I will kill myself if you don't kill those people. And so he was a teenager, and he occasioned the deaths. He was a murderer of 35 people. And then, not only that, but he also destroyed the crops for the village in which the aunt and uncle lived. So then he's a teenager, and I'll just comment here, he's very clearly, his mom and he experienced that human script that the Buddha is talking about: anger, selfishness, greed, the ability to choose to use my beautiful human volition to abuse other humans. So they were the recipient of that, and what they did was say, okay, we're just going to flip that. We're going to respond with violence. We're going to respond with anger. We're going to respond with hatred, because we ourselves have experienced violence and anger and hatred. And what he found after he had had the 35 people killed was that he could not be with himself. He said, I forgot to eat during the day. If I was inside, I wanted to be outside. If I was outside, I wanted to be inside. At night, I couldn't sleep. And you can feel that, like he can't be with himself. And then he realized, I myself created this. I created this. That means I can uncreate it. I can create something different. And so he became a yogi. He also followed the teachings of Buddha. And he found a teacher. And the very first thing that his teacher set him to was karma yoga, being of service. In order to purify his consciousness, his teacher said, build a tower made out of rocks with your bare hands. And so he did. Stone by stone, he built this tower. When the tower was complete, his teacher said, now tear it down. And then his teacher again said, build a tower. Stone by stone, build a tower. And when the tower was complete, his teacher said, tear it down. A third time, his teacher said, build a tower. When the tower was complete, his teacher said, tear it down. Can you just feel the ego being torn down? You can feel it. You can feel the way the pride, the anger, the hatred, the vengeance, the violence, the jealousy, the ferociousness, it's being torn down through that process of building the towers and tearing them down. And then a fourth time, his teacher said to him, build a tower out of stone with your bare hands. The fourth tower, the teacher let stand. The fourth tower still stands. And then the teacher taught him to meditate. And in his lifetime, this person who had been a murderer became a fully realized being of light. And what this tells you is there is no one from whom that light is separate. Go back to that teaching from the Upanishads. Finally, the indwelling Supreme Self, the true human, by its inherent power of illumination, renounces all bondage of limitations and regains freedom. And so, whatever it is that we humanly, in our own journey, in our own lifetime, get to transform, remember that story. It is possible in a single life. Don't recommend it. If you have the option not to start off as a murderer, don't. But if you have taken a life, that story tells you you can heal and transform and illumine your consciousness within a single lifetime. That story tells you if you have been the recipient of anger or hatred or violence, you can heal within a single lifetime. And obviously, gain the wisdom, keep the wisdom that you have gained through your experiences, and let go of the pain. So there's a process of self-liberation, a process of saying, these are related to teachings about forgiveness as well. There is a process of saying something like, if you were this particular yogi, my aunt and my uncle, in their ignorance, because they didn't know any better, were greedy, they were selfish, they were hateful, they were vile, they were abusive. I'm not condoning that behavior. And I also know that at the core of their being, deeper than all of that, is light. And I am going to identify with light rather than with that hateful behavior. I am going to free my consciousness of anger. I am going to free my consciousness of hatred. I am going to free my consciousness of pride. I am going to free my consciousness of vanity. I am going to free my consciousness of selfishness. I am going to free my consciousness of attachment. And then I am free. How do I want to respond to whatever the human situation is? I have peace and poise and wisdom and awareness and presence and inspiration and insight and kindness from within myself. I also, and this is an important part of this self-liberation that we gain when we are in contact with the light within ourselves, I forgive myself for having seemingly been affected adversely. I forgive myself for having seemingly been affected adversely. Do you notice what happens then? There's no longer a way in which you are bound to that experience. You are freeing yourself in relation to that experience. You are keeping the wisdom and you are moving forward. Another thing, if you find that your thoughts or your feelings are running in that little hamster wheel, they're recursive, just say to yourself, by the power of illumination within me, I move my feelings forward. By the power of illumination within me, I move my thoughts forward. I am not in that moment of time when the abuse happened, when the wrong was done, when the harm was perpetrated. I am not there in consciousness. I am free. In this moment, I am free. And so I move my feelings forward. I move my thoughts forward. What feelings would I like to feel now? And so, for example, going back to the example of that yogi was not treated with love. That yogi was not treated with support. That yogi was not treated with respect or goodwill. In the now, that yogi is free to extend love, support, respect, and goodwill to himself. So whatever it is that you did not receive that you wish you had received, give it to yourself now, in consciousness and in energy. So for that yogi, I open my heart and I give myself love. I open my heart and I give myself support. I open my heart and I give myself respect. I open my heart and I give myself goodwill. And then what happens is you are moving in the flow of that energy. That is in your consciousness. That is going to be what you are creating now. So you're changing, just to name this out loud, some of the ways that people would say this today, you're changing your vibration. You're changing your frequency. You're changing your energy. You're changing your consciousness, which changes your experience. It changes your world. It changes the light that you are bringing to the world. And so just notice, practice that one more time again. Imagine that you're in that recursive thought pattern or that old feeling pattern. I move my feelings forward. What would I love to feel? I move my feelings forward and I fill all of myself with those feelings. The Upanishads are saying this. Your feelings are either helping you live in limitation or liberation. So I move my feelings by the power of illumination within me to liberation. I move my thoughts by the power of illumination within me to joy. I move my choices by the power of illumination within me to generosity, to kindness, to goodwill, to respect. Also know, one of the keys here is let go of judgment. Let go of judging yourself. Let go of judging others from the outside. So just as if you had looked at that yogi when he was a teenager and you would have said, murderer, that would have in your consciousness foreclosed the complete illumination that that same being demonstrated and lived later in life. So don't foreclose consciousness. No one is the worst thing that they have done. No one. No one is limited to their past mistakes. No one. And the moment that you realize this, you're back in the power of illumination. This is related to a teaching, I'll close with this. This is related to a teaching in 1 Corinthians that says, know ye not, ye are the temples of God. It's basically saying you are a temple of light. And so each of us gets to choose, what do I want to bring into this temple of light? What thoughts do I want to fill this temple of light with? What feelings do I want to bring into this temple of light? What choices do I want to make in this temple of light? But also notice, every being on the planet is a temple of light as well. And so also notice, if you're greeting your brother or your sister or your boss or your supervisee, whoever it is that you're greeting, the person on the bus, as a temple of light, they're going to respond to you in a very different way than if you're looking at them and saying, cranky pants. So inwardly, always, this is a temple of light. That's what these teachings are all saying. A temple of light is right here. A temple of light is in every being on the planet. And so I can live in the temple of light. I can live remembering that I have the power to choose my thoughts. That is freedom. And that gives me the ability always to open to this unconditional love, to unfold this consciousness of unconditional light and joy and generosity and kindness. When I am moving in that energy, there is an intrinsic, there's no outside results that you have to wait for. So see if you can feel that within yourself. I am moving in the energy of unconditional love. It's in my body right now. There's no outside feedback you're waiting for. I'm moving in the energy of unconditional love. It's in my heart right now. There's no outside response you're waiting for. I'm moving in the energy of unconditional love. It's in my mind right now. And so what happens then is the only thoughts that think through you are this light. The only choices that are made through you are this light. The only feelings that share through you are this light. And when we live in that way, we bless ourselves, we bless everyone we encounter. Thank God. God bless us all.